All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Over the College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here with 2023 ACC predictions. Nick, we're finally here. I do want to preface by saying that we are aware that there is no longer divisions in this conference, but for formatting purposes, we went ahead and broke it up anyways. Looking at the top seed in this conference, Nick, Florida State. We have them going 11-1 here, 7-1. A win over LSU. I have them personally losing to Clemson early on in the season. They go on the road to play the Tigers. This is a team, though, that has massive expectations, Nick. They've really built up well in the portal, coming off a phenomenal class. Guys like Winston Wright, Trey Benson, Jordan Travis in the past. Wright's finally going to get on the field this season. Johnny Wilson as well. This team is really built off transfers, Nick. They pick up guys like Kyle Morlock and Jaheim Bell on the offensive side of the ball. They come off a year where they had, a top 10 offense in yards. They're 16th in points per game. There's going to be a lot of expectations for this unit. Jordan Travis is, probably going to be a guy that's going to land on the Heisman podium. The main thing we're wanting to watch, though, Nick, is this rushing attack and then the offensive line. How do they improve in pass protection? They picked up guys like Keandre Jones, Casey Roderick, and then Jeremiah Byers. There's a lot working for this offense, Nick. They're completely loaded at talent. They're deep in the backfield, deep at wide receiver. They even have a five-star coming in, Hakeem Williams. What's the biggest thing you're focused on this year with this offense that was great last season, but certainly they didn't, exactly have a perfect performance throughout 2022?
It's a very talented team that returns a lot of incredible offensive pieces. This is a team that put up 36.1 points per game last year. They return their star quarterback, Jordan Travis, who I think is a great size, good frame, even though it's a little bit on the thinner side at 6'1", 212. Travis, top 3 in the Heisman odds, depending on what book you look at. I think he'll certainly be there in New York come January, December. I think he is that talented of a quarterback to have. Trey Benson's another great back to add to this offense. I think Benson adds a whole level to this offense that we haven't seen. This running back room was a bit of by committee approach last year. They tried to divide it up and spread out the love. Benson's here, going to lead the way here. I think he's going to get the keys to this offense. Rodney Hill's a solid redshirt freshman backing up as well. So I think you have a talented 1-2 punch there, but you get Benson with the majority of the carries. They made a lot of work in the portal. They added some pieces in the offensive line they needed to add. And Jaheim Bell's a very underrated add out of the portal. I think Bell is fantastic for this offense. He was a good tight end at South Carolina. He comes over here and has the opportunity to shine on the Seminoles team. People were, Norvell fired a few years ago after they lost to Jacksonville State. They struggled all over the board, but last year they put it together and started rattling off some serious wins, and now they're ready to contend in the ACC. I think this team has aspirations of a national championship. This is a very good team on paper. They made some nice work in the portal, and it's not even mentioning that they returned their best defensive piece in Jared Verse.
Yeah, you look at what they have in wide receiver before you get to that talented defense, because I don't think people are really talking about what they have at the receiving core. Johnny Wilson, 6'7", 235. He can win vertically. Obviously, he has a great high point. Winston Wright, who I just alluded to a minute ago, former West Virginia slot animal. He's great underneath, incredibly shifty. Hakeem Williams, of course. And they also added Keon Coleman here late, an athletic player with some leaping ability from Michigan State. I didn't have them in my top 10 nationally in terms of receiving cores, Nick, just because this year receiving talent is absurd in college football. But Florida State, they're right there knocking on the door of that top 10. Jordan Travis has unlimited weapons at his disposal.
He certainly has a lot of people to throw. A guy like him who can really find them in the pocket. Great pocket awareness, good zip on the ball from Jordan Travis. Winston Wright is a very nice piece to return, great in the slot. That shifty size at 5'9", 180 is fantastic. I think he's perfect for the slot. Hakeem Williams as well is a true five-star freak. Great build on him, fantastic player. I think he's a really good piece to add to this offense as well. This offense is high power, high flying. They should put up a ton of points this year.
And the defensive side of the ball is also expected to continue to grow. Both sides return 8 starters. And they're going to be led by, of course, Jared Verse, the guy who we have winning Conference Player of the Year, consensus first-team All-American. He could have went first-round surefire last year, Nick. He decides to return after coming over from UAlbany. Instantly, week 1 against LSU, he was putting on a show. He wasted no time getting to work, and that lasted throughout the season. This defensive line, though, is flat-out elite. Patrick Payton is a freshman last year. He was a pretty impressive raw prospect. He can be elite with some added moves and some strength. He also produced quite well last season. Braden Fiskey, a phenomenal add from Western Michigan. 20 tackle for loss, 10 sacks the past 2 seasons. Fabian Lovett, he was a little banged up most part of last year, but he's a good run gap clogger. Darnell Jackson, the guy who's 6'6", 300. And they also got Gilbert Edmond from South Carolina. This defensive line was already really good, Nick. They go to the portal. They beef it up anymore. They see what Georgia's doing up there in Athens. They want to be like them. The Noles have done a great job with this defensive line. One of the nation's top 3.
defense was very good last year, but it struggled against the run. That was their one big issue. They gave 156.3 yards per game on the ground, and they're trying to address that with building up a better defensive line. This defensive line is fantastic. Jared Verse is going to be the conference player of the year for on the defensive side of the ball. He could have been a top 10, top 15 pick. Stays at Florida State, gets another year. I think it's a great move for him. This team has produced some serious talent like Jermaine Johnson on the edge recently, so they certainly have a pedigree in producing talent as of late. Verse looked great in his first year from Albany. Darnell Jackson's fantastic at defensive tackle. Fabian Lovett, another good piece. Braden Frisk coming over, a fantastic add in the portal. He looked good his past 2 seasons. Patrick Payton as well was really good as a freshman. This very deep unit that just continues to punch you one after the other. If you block one of these guys, there's 2 more that can come around the corner and get you. Very deep defensive line.
The middle of the defense is just as good in terms of experience. Tatum Bethune, a former UCF transfer, ended up being a great downhill player for them, filling run lanes. Kalen DeLoach, he's been around a while. And then DJ Lundy is a hard hitter. They were 75th against the run last year, Nick. Maybe a bit of a skewed number. You know, they gave up 262 and then 253 in the final 2 games of the year against Florida and Oklahoma, respectively. Early on in week 3 of the year, they gave up 252, 3 scores to Louisville. They won all those games, though, Nick. This run defense, even when they struggled, they were able to win. Their run defense is easily going to crack the top 40 this season, I would say, with what they have on that defensive front and the experience at linebacker. Very excited for the progression up front, but if they disappoint, I'm just going to be shaking and scratching my head that Mike Norvell is not able to get these guys in tune.
Mike Norvell went out and addressed the one issue, which was the run defense. Like you said, it might be a little skewed, but I still think the number is disappointing being 75th in the nation. He went out and added pieces to work on that. Tatum Bethune is a fantastic inside linebacker, good hitter. DJ Lundy is a very good player as well. This is a good front 7 overall. These guys are all hard-hitting, athletic players on the defensive side of the ball that can really go out there and lay a guy out. This is a very good front 7. They have nice athletic ability, and they're going to be great against the run this year.
And then you look at the secondary, they're 4th last year, and they pick up Fentrell Cypress, the matchup with Bernardo Green, who was an elite run defender for them. Cypress coming over from Virginia. He was elite in coverage this past season, so they have a bit of a versatile secondary here. Greedy Vance, he was a great nickel for them, 3 interceptions. I certainly think that this average safety group might let them down at times this season, but what they have at cornerback, I think, certainly going to be able to do well in the ACC. You talk about wide receiver talent in this conference. It's not exactly loaded in the ACC, maybe out across the other parts of the nation it is, but not so much in this conference, so I don't think they're really going to be hammered too often this year.
Fentrell Cypress, a lot of people's Newcomer of the Year award winner in this conference, coming over from Virginia, joining the Florida State Seminoles here. I think it's a great add out of the portal. Cypress, a good, hard-hitting player in the secondary. I think this unit will be just fine. Like you said, the talent at wide receiver ACC is a little below par with the rest of the Power 5, so I'm not as concerned about it. It might come back to bite them in postseason play if they get there, or a bowl game if they do not make the postseason. But overall, I think this is a good defense that has a lot of serious talent, one of the best in the nation, a great defense, I might actually say instead. Very talented unit top to bottom. These guys are heavy hitting. Mike Norvell has revamped this defense. They were good last year. They're going to be great this year.
The last point I'll make is those 3 games they allowed 250-plus yards in. They were 3-0 in those games, but those are all one-score games, Nick. I certainly want to see them kind of drift away from these one-score games. There was a handful of them last year. The one against Clemson was a resilient effort. At NC State was certainly a disappointing game from their offense. This team has plenty of expectations, Nick. Shades of 2013 here in Tallahassee. What do they have to do to not let the expectations get to their head? Because we've seen it before in college football where teams just flat out disappoint when they have a lot in front of them and they just can't accomplish it.
They certainly need to go out and focus and beat LSU week 1 in Orlando. It's going to be a pro Florida State crowd in Orlando, just like it was a pro LSU crowd last year in the Superdome. They flipped this sort of home and home, not really a home and home, but I'm going to call it a home and home just because it's close to the sites of the campuses. Florida State has to go out and beat LSU week 1, right? They have to prove us right and beat LSU week 1. They got to shut out all the noise and dominate against the Tigers. Then they got to beat the Clemson Tigers later in the month, right? That's a 2 big, heavy opportunities for this Florida State team. Mike Norvell, he's going to put his money where his mouth is in these 2 games against Tigers schools. I think they can beat both of them, certainly. I know we picked Clemson to beat Florida State, but they knock off Clemson if they have the right energy. This team has a lot of energy right now. This team is full of talent. They got to come up and live up the expectations.
And look at those Clemson Tigers. We just talked about how they're going to beat Florida State. At least that's a prediction for now. But I still have them losing 2 games. I have them losing to Duke and to Miami. And it's very simple why. This interior offensive line, I'm just not a fan of, Nick. And I think Duke with Dwayne Carter, RJ Oben, and you look at Miami, guys like Leonard Taylor, Akeem Mesidor. I mean, these teams are pretty darn good on the defensive front, Nick, and I don't think Clemson matches up very well with them. You know, obviously Garrett Riley's going to come over in this air raid scheme, certainly going to help with trying to get rid of some of those deficiencies, but I don't think they really have the talent here to really execute that well on offense this year. Obviously, Will Shipley's a great bigger back, very effective at the goal line, a nice inside slasher. Antonio Williams really stepped up last year as a true freshman. He had good awareness to get open. Him and these quarterbacks really seem to be on the same page this past season. Tristan Lee, though, a former 5-star, is going to step in at tackle. Hasn't seen him field much the last couple of seasons. Bill Putnam, he played 1,000 snaps last year. He was quality for them, but the other guys, Marcus Tate was below average. Walker Parks was a flat out liability. I'm just not a big fan of this interior offensive line, Nick. I think it's going to be a big liability, which is not great considering Cade Klubnik, a former 5-star, has elite touch and placement, really good accuracy, really struggled against Tennessee, showcasing some of his youth, hasn't done the greatest against pressure, but this guy gives you shades of Trevor Lawrence, former #1 recruit, stepping in here. He's going to be the saving grace for this offense, finally got the keys late last season. That offensive line, Nick, it's not good at all for me. I think it's really going to hurt him this year in conference play.
This is where Dabo's decision to ignore the transfer portal really back to bite them. They should have gone on the portal and grabbed some offensive line pieces. They only made one portal move, grabbing a backup quarterback in Paul Tyson, which is still a weird move for both parties involved. They should have gone out and attacked the portal and got offensive line pieces. I just don't trust what they have. Marcus Tate, I do not trust at all. Blake Miller at left tackle, concerned certainly with him. Walker Parks as well. Tristan Lee on the right tackle position. Really concerned about both tackle positions. Seriously worries me. It's certainly going to hamper this offense that has some. Outside of that, Cade Klubnik is a star quarterback, right? He's a not true freshman, but he's a sophomore star, right? 5-star, true blue chip prospect. So much talent with Klubnik. I love the size at 6'2", 195. Perfect in the pocket, good accuracy, good touch, great at reading defenses, very good athlete overall. Will Shipley, nice power back, great for the goal line, good leader in the locker room. This guy's a veteran. He knows what's going on. Really can run people over at 5'11", 205. Very interesting size. But I get concerned about the offensive weapons he has to work with. It's nice they have Garrett Riley in there, who obviously is a fantastic play caller and will redesign this offense a little bit. But I worry about the weapons at wide receiver, and I certainly worry about this offensive line.
The good news for them up front is everyone's 315 or bigger, so they do have some impressive size. And I guess we need to touch on it, Nick. I can't believe we waited a couple minutes to do so. And it's the recruiting has not been good on this side of the ball. Obviously, in the 2024 class and beyond, they've started to really pick up the pace a little bit. They're starting to bring some guys home now. But for right now, Nick, in the past couple seasons, recruiting has not been good. Wide receiver, a freshman, Noble Johnson, who has some good speed. He's probably going to get on the field a good bit. Antonio Williams, he was a true freshman last year, and he ended up being their best pass catcher. That's great that he was able to step up like that immediately. But this is an elite program, Nick. They should not have to lean on true freshmen to step up in the skilled positions or up front on the offensive line.
This is something we've talked about a few times when we've done episodes in Clemson. The recruiting the past 2 years have really puzzled us. Clemson's got back on the recruiting trail recently. It might have been that Dabo listened to us. He's been hitting it hard recruiting, but still been focusing on the defensive side first. They brought in a lot of talent on defense, which is certainly nice. A couple 5-stars here and there. Peter Woods is the guy we'll highlight in a little bit. But outside of that, their offensive recruiting has been poor. They've really struggled to bring in any talent. The only real name they brought in was their quarterback, Christian Vieza, who's just not even that talented of a quarterback compared to other quarterbacks in this class, and kind of a weird fit here as well. They really need to figure out what they're doing on offense. Like you said, Antonio Williams broke out as a true freshman last year in the slot, but outside of that, they don't have a lot of depth at wide receiver. They really lacked recruiting, and Dabo won't touch the portal, so you really start to question who's going to be catching the passes here, because this is not a deep room. If someone gets injured early on, they can find themselves in some serious trouble.
Clemson still has the formula to the playoffs, though, Nick, because they have an elite defense, and then they have that 5-star quarterback on the other side. That's really all you need in college football at times, don't you think? And I think the Tigers, it was noticeably Brett Venables, it was a noticeable departure last year, but this is still a team that's incredibly deep. They didn't lose too many guys to transfer. Nope, I don't think anybody left for Oklahoma. They all believed in Dabo's culture here. They wanted to be a Clemson Tiger. The defensive line, obviously Brian Bresee, Miles Murphy, they depart. Depth will be a little bit tested this year, but that's what he said. A guy like Peter Woods, a true freshman who impressed in the spring with versatility, likely to get on the field. Ruka Horo, good penetrator, great first step, really slants into some creases very well. They're going to pair him up with Tyler Davis. This is a guy who has strong balance of power, nice athleticism. They're still very impressive on the interior, Nick, even if depth will be tested a little bit. Xavier Thomas, a veteran pass rusher, has great burst. He's been here for a couple of seasons now. Really just a pass rush specialist with him. Really struggle versus the run. What's your assessment of the Clemson defensive line that might take a small step back, but they'll still be one of the nation's best?
I think Woods has potential to be an absolute star in college football. I saw him play in high school. Very talented player, top to bottom. Tyler Davis, another good interior piece. Xavier Thomas, I'd like to see him improve against the run. I think he has the potential to do so. We haven't quite seen that run defense that we need to see out of him, but he's a very talented player, very good pass rusher, good against the pass, certainly. Ruka Rojo is also a very talented player, good penetrator, great first step. I think this is a good unit that caps off a really talented defense that's good on the back end especially.
In the middle of their defense, Barrett Carter, Jeremiah Trotter, these guys were top 50 recruits in their respective class 2 years ago. This side of the ball, recruiting is not falling off one bit, and these guys show it. We expected them this past season to finally get on the field and showcase their talents, and they didn't disappoint one bit. Barrett Carter's athleticism, really showcased his great coverage skills. He lined up in the slot for 331 snaps. This is a Brent Venables type player, Nick, a guy who can play linebacker and be, in the slot, playing deep in coverage. He has bad intentions when tracking the ball carrier at full speed. Great closing burst, just a heck of a football player. And then Trotter, his production this past season was just phenomenal. He also showcased some good eyes in coverage, was very effective as a pass rusher, a sturdy tackler, did very well against those bigger linemen. He was a big difference maker, made plays in all facets of the game. They also have, a guy last year and a rising sophomore, Wade Woodaz, who's going to, provide some valuable depth. Love this linebacking core. Do you think it's better than the one up in Athens, though?
I think it's certainly a very talented group. Jeremiah Trotter is a fantastic middle linebacker, very talented, hard-hitting player. Like the size on him, really talented with that regard. Barrett Carter, also very athletic, good in the slot, good against coverage. I like him a whole lot, too. I think he's got really good tackling ability against the run. Also, like I said, solid in coverage. He's really kind of a do-it-all linebacker. They also have some nice depth in Woods, like you said. Overall, it's a very deep unit. I think this 1-2 punch of Carter and Trotter is one of the nation's best, and it really is a very valuable part of this defense.
Biggest criticism for the Clemson defense from me the past couple seasons is the secondary, but I think they're really going to grow into their own this season. That's exactly what Nate Wiggins did over the past half of last year. First half of the year was really rough for him, especially that Wake Forest game. He's getting torn apart, but he's capable of laying the boom and run support, and he was much better in coverage late in the year. Sheridan Jones on the other side, an impressive athlete. He can run vertically. They have a sound cornerback duo here, Nick. Certainly want to see them be more consistent, though. Andrew McCumba didn't exactly evolve into that All-American we expected last year, but he was beat up all of last year. Versatile safety, fluid, explosive athlete. He's great at burst. RJ Minkins, this is a guy I think is going to be the breakout player of the year in the conference. He can anchor the slot or at strong safety, and I think the safety group certainly is a little questionable, and Minkins is a reliable coverage guy, 6 foot 210. He's going to be a bit of a package player this year, and Malcolm Green transfers out, so I think that opens the door for him to get some more time. They do have former 5-stars Jaden Lucas, Toriano Pride, provide some good depth. I think the secondary is finally ready to take that next step, Nick, something they've really been struggling with the past couple of seasons.
It's a very good secondary here. I like these pieces a lot. I think Macumba will fully step up. He battled a lot of injuries last year. Didn't quite see the full potential out of him. I think he has the opportunity to step up this year and be that number one guy at strong safety. Nate Wiggins is a fantastic player at cornerback. Sheridan Jones as well, another great player. Good veteran leadership there. Jalen Phillips, and not a bad free safety at all, and they have some nice depth there. Like you said, with Torino Pride and Jaden Lucas, I think this is a very talented, very deep unit. One of the nation's I think it's very slept on. People are talking about this Clemson secondary enough. There's a lot of talent here to go around. This is a very good unit overall on defense. This defense is going to dominate this year.
And you move to the Louisville Cardinal, a team that quietly won the offseason. Scott Satterfield, for some reason departed, took a sideways move to Cincinnati. They opened the door for Jeff Brom and Brian Brom to come back to their alma mater. The opportunity was here about 4 years ago. They didn't take it, but this time seems to be the right time for this to happen, Nick. They completely hammered the portal. They added 15 players on offense, another 10 on the defensive side of the ball. This offense is pretty unbelievable, I'd say, on paper. Jack Plummer comes over from Cal. He was previously at Purdue in Brom's system, so he has experience from those Purdue days. He shows good command of the pocket. Doesn't have the greatest of arm talent, but he does have good touch across all levels of the field. And, I certainly think those qualities are going to go a long way in this offense. Jawar Jordan, one of the only guys that really returns from the skill positions from last year, really emerged late in the year for them at running back. We'll see what kind of usage he has in this air raid scheme, or more of a pass-heavy pro-style offense, I guess you could call it. Kevin Coleman, guy who arrives from Jackson State, a quick player. He can make cuts at full speed. They picked up an honorable mention All-American in Jamari Thrash. He was an elite playmaker for Georgia State. Jaden Thompson, Jimmy Callaway. These guys have added a lot of speed to this receiving core all of a sudden, Nick. They also have Amari Huggins, Bruce, and Chris Bell. Some guys have some pretty impressive size and some experience from the Satterfield days. What they were able to do this offseason with this offense is mind-blowing. I'm very excited to watch these guys play together.
Talk about a total portal revamp here. Fantastic work as they bring in a new coach here, Jeff and Brian Brom. This is a great pairing. I like the idea of running the air raid here. I think it's fantastic. Jack Plummer, I'm super excited to see what you're going to do here. Plummer had a quietly good season. Talking about it, 6'5", 215, fantastic size, great quarterback, great arm, fantastic. I think the accuracy needs to work on, but overall I think he's a very good player, great for the scheme. Jawar Jordan, I'm excited to see what he can do. Yeah, the scheme fit might not really work with him being an air raid sort of focused offense, but he's a very tough ball player, good playmaker who's really talented, nice shifty player. Kevin Coleman, great player to add, very good in traffic. I like him a lot. Jamari fantastic add as well. Jordan Thompson, good vertical threat. Jimmy Callaway, I like him a lot. Very, very speed player. Chris Bell, very underrated returning piece. This offense is very talented. I'm excited to see what they can do. They scored 26.9 points per game. That number certainly will push 30 this year. The yards per game was 400. I think they'll get over that again. This is a very talented offense, top to bottom, overnight.
And obviously the guys up front are going to have to help them out a bit, but I think it's a pretty formidable unit for them. They have some good size up front. Brian Hudson, one of the best centers in the country, a guy who has great hand placement, is a very powerful interior blocker, great toughness and physicality. He's going to be a big leader for these guys this season. I wouldn't be shocked, Nick, if they put up 35, 40 a game. I really think that they have some insane speed. I don't think many teams in the country have the speed that the Louisville Cardinals have at wide receiver, and then the veteran quarterback's really going to help these guys get in touch. So I think that this offense can be really fun this year. I hope they don't disappoint because I think they could be a highlight reel offense all year long.
I certainly think they can put up a ton of points. I'm excited to see what this offense can do. I think they have really high potential here to dominate on the field. I think they're going to put up a ton of points. Like you said, 35, 40 is certainly in the ballpark for this offense. I'm excited to see how the new scheme fit works. I think they really lucked out in the coaching, and I'm very excited to see how it works out.
So the biggest problem, though, is this defense. They were great last season, which I expected them to be good, but not this good. 11th in points per game, 50 sacks, which was the nation's best. Complete revampment up front, Nick. They lose a lot of those guys. Ashton Gilletti, he's going to really have to step up here for them. In the middle of their defense, Keith Brown, he's coming over from Oregon, a former four-star, really wasn't all that great. They don't have much experience in the middle. Sonogo and Monty Montgomery, they depart from the middle of this defense. You look at the back end, they lose Keitrell Clark on top of 4 of the top 5 sack getters. The secondary, I think, still pretty solid, though. Gilbert Frierson, he was really good in a versatile hybrid role. That's what the star position is in this defense. He was pretty good for Miami. And then you also got Jarvis Brownlee, who's a great performer, great run stopper, was phenomenal in coverage. One of the more underrated players in the nation, I'd say, in the back end. Devin Neal, Cameron Kelly, some guys they picked up in the secondary, Storm Duck they picked up. So they really, had high attention to this. They picked up 5 guys in the portal from the secondary. This is a unit I think certainly going to be a strength for them, which is going to be good news considering the pass rush is destined to take a step back. They're not going to be anywhere near 50 sacks again this season.
Certainly going to struggle to hit that number. This defense was really good last year, very underrated, 19.2 points per game, very good against the run, very good against the pass as well. This is a unit that I like the secondary a lot. I think Gilbert Frierson's coming over from Miami, fantastic player, very talented. MJ Griffin, another good run defender, hard hitting. Storm Duck has a ton of potential, but very inconsistent UNC. I think this move for him is good. I like to see what he can do. Cameron Kelly, another guy from UNC that adds a lot of potential. Devin Neal, another good add. Josh Minkins as well. He struggled, but he's got a lot of potential. Benjamin Perry, very good player at that star position, versatile hybrid player. I like this secondary a lot. These guys are hard hitting. They're going to struggle a little bit getting pass coverage. I think that's certainly going to be an issue, but these guys are hard hitting this year.
Yeah, Louisville struck gold this offseason. Usually when your head coach leaves, it's not a good thing. But in this case, they ended up getting a homegrown guy to take the job. And look what he's already did. I think they did a great job this offseason. It wasn't planned one bit for them. That's just how it works out sometimes. 8-4 debut season will be very strong for them. Look at the rest of this division, de facto division, I guess you could say. NC State, Nick, obviously they weren't great on offense last year. Really struggled to run the ball. The offensive line was just poor, even though they do have good size. Guys like Anthony Belton at left tackle was a complete brick at 330. Receiving core is not that talented one bit. Keon Lassane's a solid player, but Brandon Armstrong, he's reuniting with Robert and I here, who 2 years ago, these guys were elite at Virginia. The production they had, over 4,500 plus yards, 40 plus touchdowns. The hope here is that Armstrong can come in and just up the production overall in the playmaking on this offense. I still think the ceiling's quite low, though, because the talent around him is just pretty poor, Nick. What are your expectations for this NC State offense?
This is a team that has some potential here with Brendan Armstrong at quarterback. He's a very talented quarterback, good arm, great, in the air raid. We saw him put up a ton of points at Virginia, a ton of yards 2 seasons ago. Just did not work at all last year, really stalled out last year. He makes a new move to North Carolina State. I think it works great here. I think this is a team that has some potential. Of course, they lost their quarterback, Devin Leary. This is a talented offense that has some nice pieces. This team disappointed last year. They've disappointed the last couple of years. They're looking to finally break out. Is this the year they do it? We don't think so, but it's certainly possible.
Yeah, Dave Doran's group certainly is strong on the defensive side of the ball. Devin Van returns, CJ Clark. They have some good size still. Saban Jackson also is a good run stopper on this defensive line. 11th against the run last season. Peyton Wilson. This was one of the nation's top linebacking cores a year ago, and they certainly delivered. The production was flat out elite. Certainly overlooked by some of the offensive woes. But Wilson's going to come back. He's going to be a first-team all-conference for them. Devon Beatty, though, he's an high upside player. It's going to have to step up. Jalen Scott as well. He was a starter. These guys are going to have to circle around Wilson and be just as good as the departing guys were. Aiden White, one of the top returning corners. Shaheem Battles, quite solid on the other side. Cyrus Fagan, Jakeem Harris, a very quality safety group. I don't expect much regression. Guys like Tyler Baker-Williams depart, though. So we'll see what happens overall with this secondary. I don't expect much regression. Playmaking will fall off, though, probably after a 19-interception season. Biggest question mark, though, Nick, is when will Dave Doran's group break out? Because every year they seem to be on the cusp of doing it. They just seem capped, kind of like Dave Clawson at Wake Forest. Whatever expectations they exceed, it just doesn't seem great enough. Last year is a great example of that, and this year probably in for another average season.
I agree. I think this team is kind of stuck in this position here where they're just kind of an average team. I think they have a very talented potential here. There is a nice core that they've built here. I think Dave Doran, fantastic head coach, is a really good leader. But they seem stuck in this position. They really can't seem to get over the hump. Last year, we thought was the year they might break through. They struggled to do so. They're really disappointed. They beat Clemson 2 years ago. We thought that was going to be a kickstart of something new for the Wolfpack. Really has not worked out. I think this team's going to struggle to meet expectations again. This team's just an average ACC team. It's disappointing considering they have a nice groundwork to build a contender. It just has not worked out yet.
Yeah, and you look at Boston College, a team who's just awful up front. They do have a nice receiving core with Ryan O'Keefe coming over from UCF, Joseph Griffin as well. That's about it, though, Nick. This offense, Pat Garwo is a talented back. The offensive line was just awful last season, which was expected. Christian Mahogany coming back is good for them. Losing Josh DeBerry in the secondary isn't all that great. Elijah Jones, though, certainly going to be one of those players they can count on defense, as well as guys like Vinny DePalma. I definitely think that the defensive front for Boston College is going to be a strength, something that's kind of underrated with that football team. But Boston College, Nick, they're only going to win this many games because the schedule is just awful. We don't have it on screen, but if you look at it, it's not good one bit. But I expect Donovan is a rookie up front to really step up. Well, along with the other guys, I think it's a pretty deep defensive line. That's certainly going to be something I'm watching this year. But last year, they gave up 30 points per game. Don't expect that number to really increase too much. Jeff Hathley appears to be on his way out. But I definitely think a 7-5 season would save him, which they should certainly hit with how bad the schedule is.
Absolutely terrible schedule. Really the only saving grace for this Boston College team. They couldn't run the ball out all last year. Their offensive line was terrible. Pretty solid defense at times. There was some nice production. But overall, it's a team that just struggles. Jeff Hathley seems to be in trouble. This team, they're just kind of mediocre at best. The defense really gave up too many points, 30.3 points per game this past season. Just absolutely awful. The offense could not score at all. The offense really struggled to do anything of note, and they're going to struggle again this year, in my opinion. The schedule is just super easy, like we said, which is why they're going to get to 7 wins, which is certainly shocking for BC to be at 7 wins. Overall, this program's kind of just stuck where they are. They're really not going to ever hit higher than that, and I think Jeff Hathley and them are just going to kind of sit there and ride this one out. Hathley's going to keep his job for now, but it's certainly interesting to see what happens at BC the next 5 years.
Yeah, 63.2 rushing yards per game. That was one of the worst marks I've ever seen in my life in college football. They were just awful up front. Look at Syracuse, though. Garrett Schrader, Aronde Gadsden. That's really it for that offense. They certainly have not really done well up front despite having some great size over the past couple seasons. And they also lose some guys to the NFL like Matthew Bergeron. The receiving core is really going to have to pick up the pace for what Gadsden can't do. The running back unit, they lose Sean Tucker. The offense last year, about 28 points per game. Very solid, fair point for them. The defensive side of the ball was really impressive, though, and I think it's certainly going to continue to be a strength, especially in the middle with Margo Wax at linebacker. They do lose 2 guys in Chestnut and Carter in the secondary, but I think Isaiah Johnson's going to step up. Jason Simmons has a role carved out for him. Jeremiah Wilson, he was an average player, but I certainly think these guys are going to continue to step up in the secondary. I think that's certainly going to be a strong point for them. Not much for this defense, though, Nick. They also lose Tony White as their defensive coordinator, replaced by Rocky Long. Dino Babers, another one of those guys, contract expiring soon. What they do with him is really going to be the biggest storyline this season for the Orange.
Certainly a lot of question marks what happens with Dino Babers. You don't want to overpay him, but I don't think you want to lose him either. He's been a steady head coach here, get this team bowl eligible. That's certainly the goal here for Syracuse, to be back in a bowl. They lose Sean Tucker, which is pretty tough loss for them, certainly, but Garrett Schrader is a fantastic quarterback. I like what he can do with his legs. I like what he can do in the pocket. This defense, I don't think it's going to regress as poorly as other people do. I certainly think having a new defensive coordinator in there is going to cause some problems. Overall, I think the Syracuse team, bowl eligibility is the expectation. That's really all they want up in upstate New York. I think it's certainly possible given the schedule. We have them at 6-6. They could certainly push 7 wins as well if they flip one of those games. Overall, Dino Babers has done a solid job, in my opinion. I know he has a net losing record. I think he's been building a program here. They produced some nice talent. The offensive line, I think this offensive line has some potential this year as well. Defensive line, also not a bad unit. Overall, Syracuse is just kind of one of those mid-ACC programs that certainly wants to try and get to a bowl game.
You look at Wake Forest around this division out. Kobe Turner, Rondell Bothroyd leave on the defensive line. Jasheen Davis is back, though. Still quite talented defensive line. Keydron Wayman, I think, is going to be big for them. Kalen Carlson in the secondary, Malik Mustafa. They have some good individual players, and they also picked up Jacob Roberts, who is productive for North Carolina A&T. That's all this defense really is, Nick, is just good productivity from individual players. I do think the run defense, though, was really strong because this defensive line was actually quite talented. A lot of people didn't give them respect for. But I don't really expect the defense to be much different than what they've been over the past couple of years. That includes a lot of passing yards allowed. Mitch Griffiths, though, I expect him to be a really good player this season. I think he's going to push 3,000, 3,500 passing yards. Receiving group is great. Jamal Banks is returning. Taylor Morton, Keyshawn Williams, Donovan Green was just announced he'll miss probably the entire season. So that's not good for them. Justice Ellison, a good contact runner. He's back for them. So I certainly think this offense will, be at that 30, 32 point per game mark. But losing Sam Hartman, who showcased great command of the offense, it's going to be tough. But at the same time, that was a turnover-prone quarterback. So maybe there's, good light on the other side of the tunnel here, Nick, for this offense. 5-7 for me, though, for Wake Forest.
I think Wake Forest is a 5-17 team. They're just an average ACC team, like we've been saying. Those teams in the conference, they lose Sam Hartman, which is a tough loss. But like you said, the losing all those turnovers is probably a positive thing. This defense has some room to improve here. I think this is not a bad defense, but they just seem to struggle to keep themselves in games against some of those bigger teams in the conference. Overall, just a bottom tier defense in most regard. They do bring back some nice talented pieces, but they lose some big starters. The offense as well. I think Mitch Griffiths at quarterback has some potential certainly to be a nice leader for this team. Jamal Banks as well as a good route runner, nice on the offense. The interior offensive line and the offensive line as a whole is a pretty solid group. Nice blocking. Justice Ellison as well is a pretty good back. Wake Forest, Dave Clawson seems like they're capped. They really seem to be able to struggle due to the fact that they're the smallest Division I Power 5 football school. They're also, have a lot of educational restrictions, being a very high-class, powerful school in that regard. So overall, I think Wake Forest is in for a tough season. Disappointing for the fans considering they won their division just 2 years ago.
Looking at the other half of this conference, the Miami Hurricanes, I have them losing to the Florida State Seminoles in the conference championship game. Mario Cristobal, I really think the work he's doing here is really going to start showing up, and I think it's going to be this season, Nick. Obviously, they really disappointed last year, but Mario Cristobal is going to preach physicality as an ex-offensive line coach. Made some changes to his staff. Josh Gaddis out, Shannon Dawson in from Houston, Lance Guidry coached an elite defense at Marshall during his tenure. This offense is going to be the biggest question mark, though. 97th in points per game, 86 in yards per game. And obviously, the addition of Dawson is really going to help open up some explosive plays. I think it's going to be a well-balanced offense with some freedom for Tyler Van Dyke, who really struggled after a strong freshman season. He obviously has touch, zip, and accuracy. He can win at all levels. He's going to need this receiving core to step up, though. Colby Young, Xavier Restapro, Tyler Harrell shows up with elite speed. Didn't play for Bama last year, though. Cam McCormick is a veteran tight end. This isn't the deepest of wide receiver groups. The running back group, I don't think, is exactly where they want it to be in terms of a power run game. But Henry Parrish is a great slashing runner. A.J. Allen, a former four-star, comes in. Mark Fletcher as well, a big physical imposer. He might be a true freshman that gets on the field a lot this season, Nick. The supporting cast for Miami is certainly a little iffy, but I certainly think they have the pieces here to be a very formidable unit, to certainly push them over the top, maybe 30 points per game this season.
This is a good offense that has some nice talent. I'm not as high on Miami as you are. I still want to pump the brakes a little bit after what we saw last year, but there are some nice pieces here to build a good team. Tyler Van Dyke's a very good quarterback. Had a tough year last year, but I think he can certainly bounce back. 6'4", 224, fantastic size for him. Nice zip, nice accuracy, good player. I think he's a very talented player, tight window thrower, very, very fantastic in that regard. Henry Parrish at running back, good player. I like the speed, nice cuts from him, solid overall. Colby Young, a nice explosive player to add to throw there. Jacoby George as well, another good player downfield. Cam McCormick, a nice blocking tight end, very solid as well. This offensive line has a lot of talent here. They're plugging in good guys. Zion Nelson, Matthew Lee, very talented units. Javion Cohen, big strides at Bama this past season. He transferred over. I think he's a very good, underrated transfer portal add here. I was going to consider him my newcomer of the year. Certainly a talented piece to add. This offense, they were flat out poor last year, 23.6 points per game. They should easily be over 30 points per game, pushing 35 points per game. There's a lot of talent on this offense.
Matthew Lee from UCF, a guy who's an elite pass blocker, 6'4", 295. Not exactly a mauler, but he was a good run blocker. I think he's going to take that next step, working with Alex Murbaugh this offseason. Zion Nelson, a guy who's been around a good bit now, has that good athleticism with the added weight at 316, and then they added a 5-star in Francis Muaga. So I certainly think this offensive line is really going to take shape this year. You also have guys like Jalen Rivers and Ez Cooper who are going to battle. You also have another 5-star in Samson Okunaloa. So great adds and revampments for this O-line, exactly where Cristobal wants it. That's probably the biggest reason why I'm high on this offense. I think it's certainly a collective of everything they did. Only 4 passing plays and 40-plus yards, though. 117th in FBS. And then Houston, Shannon Dawson used Clayton Tune a lot in the running game this past season. Van Dyke, he's not going to provide that option as an old school pocket passing thrower. So this offense, I think, is certainly going to dictate a lot for Miami this year, Nick. Overall, what are your final thoughts on this unit?
I think it's a good unit. I think they'll score a lot of points this year. I think there's a serious amount of talent here. They revamped the offensive line, which they need. The wide receiving room is not bad. I think they added enough pieces to make this work. I think Tyler Harrell could be involved as well. Another nice piece to add from Bama to go with Javion Cohen. I think Cohen will have a great year at left guard. I think Henry Paris is a fantastic running back. Tyler Van Dyke, I think he's going to have a very strong bounce back season. Colby Young, another good piece. This offense is certainly in for a revamp. I like that they brought a new coordinator in Shannon Dawson. The pro spread type of offense should work well here.
Biggest reason why I picked them to beat Clemson's because of this defensive line, Nick. Akeem Mesidor, Leonard Taylor. Guys were highly impactful last season. They have great traits across the board. Good production. Jafari Harvey finally produced a good bit this season. Najee Kelly showcased some flashes as a true freshman. They picked up Branson Dean, who was a great run defender for Purdue. Thomas Gore was a good nose from Georgia State. This defensive line is flat out loaded, Nick. They were 52nd last year against the run. I think they'll easily be top 15 this season. Those points per game numbers are going to go lift it down from 27 to at least 20. The middle of the defense isn't great. They certainly need to keep adding some depth. Corey Flagg was a good productive player. Francis Buaga, he was a good all-around player for Washington State. That's all they really have here in the middle of this defense. The linebacking core is certainly concerning me, adding a little bit more pressure to that unit up front that's incredibly elite.
Very talented defensive line. The linebacking core does leave a little bit to desire, but I love this defensive line. Akeem Mesidor, fantastic. Good leverage, good spin move, 6'3", 280, fantastic. Leonard Taylor, very solid, 6'3", 305. Very tall, big, bulky guys here. Jafari Harvey as well. Nikhil Kelly, another solid player, a true freshman. Branson Dean, a nice, good run defender to bring over. Thomas Gore, solid as well. Corey Flagg, I like to see him step up. I think he's probably the best player of this linebacker unit. Bobby Washington, a nice add as well. Oh, former true freshman, is very talented. Overall, that linebacking core does worry me. I think it'll be their one big drawback on defense, but that defensive line is fantastic. They're going to get after the ball. They're going to really stop the run. They're going to get after the quarterback.
The secondary has a nice blend of playmaking and then some newer guys that really have to sort out what they're going to do this year. James Williams, 6'5", 224, playing safety, highly effective in the box, a very physical tackler. He was also great in coverage across the middle, Nick. That's phenomenal that he can do that at listed size. Cameron Kitchens, a great playmaker. He had a 90 coverage grade along with 6 interceptions, showcasing great eyes. Excellent at tracking the ball. He does a lot for this defense. He's going to be a big-time leader for them this year. He's a film junkie as well, so I think that's certainly going to help everyone this season. It's really going to rub off on the rest of this defense. It's a bit of a thin cornerback group. Devontae Brown comes over from UCF, and Jaden Davis from Oklahoma was a pretty good tackler. Jedias Richard was a breakout player for Vanderbilt, and then Takuri Crouch. He's probably going to anchor the slot at redshirt senior. Tyreek Stevenson departs, of course, which is big for them, but I think they're well equipped this year with some of these transfers to be much better in the back end, Nick. I think this defense is going to take some big strides this year, trying to get back to old school Hurricane football starts this season.
Corey Crouch is a nice player in the slot, like him a whole lot. Devontae Brown, good leader, solid as well from UCF. Jaden Davis, a nice add from Oklahoma, very talented player. Jadavis Richard, very strong player at Vanderbilt. Terry Robertson, a decent add in the portal. They made a lot of work here. They added a lot of different pieces here. I think Jaden Davis has a ton of potential at right cornerback. Damari Brown, another high-rated recruit at cornerback as well, could potentially be involved as a true freshman. This is a very solid defense overall. I like this front seven, especially the defensive line. The linebacking core worries me a little bit. Secondary is pretty solid. They should be all right this year.
Now looking at number 2 in the division, the new Blue Devils. This is a team that we're probably the only people giving hype to, and I think it's very simple on why this team's going to be doing good this year. Last season, they certainly surpassed expectations. Mike Elko shows up. They had 40 points per game in 2021. He instantly gets to work, brings that number down to 22.1 points per game. That is absolutely absurd. The defense took massive strides, which was certainly unexpected. And the defensive line is phenomenal. Dwayne Carter, he excels at finding opposing ball carries, has done a great job at forcing fumbles over the past couple seasons as a good block shedder. RJ Oben at defensive end has really developed into a nice pass rusher for them. The middle of their defense is certainly questionable. The secondary, Nick, Miles Jones, Al Blake Jr., these guys are veterans in college football. They're looking to give Brandon Johnson some help. He has a real knack for finding the football, and he was great off the edge as the team's leading sack getter. So there was certainly plenty of things to worry about with this defense last season, like being 105th against the pass. But for first year on campus in Durham, Mike Elko did great with this defense, and I think scheming here is really going to be what really excels for them this upcoming season, led by that pretty formidable defensive line.
It's a very good defense. They really improved. I mean, the numbers were night and day, like 22.1 points per game, 31st in the nation, fantastic. Dwayne Carter, fantastic. Really good at finding ball carriers, nice strength, good leverage, fantastic player. Needs to work on tackling, but outside of that, very good player. RJ Oben, very solid, 6'4", 255, like him as well. Bit of a speedy guy. I like him a lot. Dorian Messiah, very solid player. Cam Dillon, another good player coming over. Last year was a starter after coming over from Columbia, very talented player. Havoc against the pass, a very solid piece. Brendan Johnson, nice, good player, good ball skills, certainly solid in the slot, very good coverage asset. Miles Jones comes over from A&M. He's a good player, 6'4", 190. I think this is a very talented unit top to bottom. I think these guys are all playmaking material. This defense is very good under Mike Elko his first year. This team blew away our expectations last year, but people are underrating them. They barely got any votes in the AP poll or in the coaches poll, and they're probably not going to get a lot of votes in the AP poll either. And it really blows my mind because this defense is very.
And the offense is even better. They returned 9 starters. They were phenomenal last season. They really were good all across the board. They have balance here. Riley Leonard really stepped up, showcasing his talent. Good touch. Did good work as a deep ball thrower. Acceleration and speed as a runner. Ideal above average dual threat quarterback to a T in Riley Leonard. I think they're deep here at running back. Jordan Waters, Jarquez Moore, Jalen Coleman. These guys are all efficient runners who take care of the football. This is a really deep backfield match with a veteran receiving core. Jalen Calhoun, he's a slot magician. Jordan Moore, not as much of a veteran as an ex-quarterback, but he really used the boundary, and he was good in the open field and underneath last year. He's really going to develop that route tree this season to be an extra asset this season. Shamar Higgins, Eli Pancol, Jatavius Robinson. Top 5 wide receivers are all back, Nick. You can even throw in Nicky Dalton, who had 4 touchdowns last year at tight end. And then one more thing I'll add is Graham Barton, one of the nation's top tackles. This guy is phenomenal. The rest of the offensive line's got to pick up the pace a little bit, but they have some good size and experience there. This team top to bottom, Nick, the defense is expected to improve once more. It certainly should under Elko. And this offense, sky is the limit for them. I really think they can get to 40 points per game this season. Absolutely in love with this Duke football team this season. Hopefully they do not disappoint us.
I absolutely love this offense. I can't believe the media is sleeping on this team. This offense is fantastic, top to bottom. Riley Leonard, he's starting to get a little more traction. I've seen a couple posts on Twitter, Instagram talking about him and finally getting the recognition he deserves. Fantastic, good acceleration, nice speed as a runner, good vision, fantastic in the pocket. Needs to work on the deep ball, but outside of that, I see no flaws in his game. Jordan Waters, Jarquez Moore, nice 1-2 punch there. Very solid players. I like the way they can move the ball. Jalen Calhoun, fantastic in the slot, really absolutely incredible. 5'11", 189, fantastic player. Jordan Moore, I like him a lot to continue to grow. He needs to work on the routes because he's new to the position, but I think he is the sky's limit with him. Eli Piccoli, Jatavius Robinson, also fantastic underrated wide receivers. Nicky Delamon, 4 touchdowns for him. Graham Barton, one of the best tackles in the nation. The offensive line does need to improve, but this offense is fantastic. 40 points per game is certainly possible. I want to see this team come out and blitz teams. I want to see them come out and blitz Clemson week 1 on Monday night. Certainly, I think it's possible they do. I love this Duke team. I'm going to rave about them all year. I'm super excited for this team. I really hope they don't let me down.
Pittsburgh Panthers right behind them. Obviously, Phil Dracovic coming over, reuniting with his old offensive coordinator, Frank Cignetti Jr. I think that's really going to elevate this passing game a good bit, especially vertically and downfield. Obviously, a good fit for this scheme. He's great off play action, 6'4", 214. He really stands tall in the pocket. Nice zip, high arcing throwing motion. Rodney Hammond, he replaces Israel Abanikanda. Hammond's a physical runner. He's got impressive strength for being 5'9", 195. He's going to be running behind 4 starters. They return up front for them. Branson Taylor was a solid left tackle. Jane Cradle at center, saw some time at guard. They're looking to get better production on some guys like him and Blake Zubac. So there's certainly some things to monitor with this offense. But right tackle Matt Gonclaves, he didn't allow a single sack last year at either tackle spot, so I think he's certainly going to be a bookend for them. Keonta Mupfield, Bub Means. These guys have been good over the past couple of seasons. I definitely want to see some more yards per catch out of these dudes, and I certainly think they will with Dracovic coming over, Nick. They don't need to be that deep at wide receiver. They really aren't. They got 2 true freshmen, Israel Polk, Lamar Seymour, coming over from high-end, strong high school programs. So they're not that deep at this position, but in this scheme, they really don't have to be all that great. I'm very happy with what they have on this offense. I think they'll show adequate balance under Frank Cignetti.
I think Dracovic is a great fit for this pro-style offense. Fantastic player. Struggled at times at Boston College, fought some injuries, but I think he's a very good player. 6'5", 214, great size, fantastic player. Good physical runner, certainly great. Explodes downfield, very talented in that regard. Derek Davis, not a bad trio coming over from LSU. I like him. Bo Filminster as well, nice physical presence. Keontae Mumfield, fantastic receiver, 6'1", 180, good size there. Bud Means needs to work on his ball security, but overall good player. They added some nice pieces. True freshman Israel Polk and Lamar Seymour as well. 2 good players to add from historic high school programs. Gavin Bartholomew at tight end, good athletic option. Nice pass blocker, good size, 6'5", 250. This is a very good offense overall. They scored 31.3 points per game this past season. They can certainly hit that 30 points per game mark again. Very talented offense top to bottom. I like this unit a lot.
Pat Narduzzi's defense year after year just continues to be great against the run and getting into the backfield. They certainly don't get enough respect. Obviously lose a handful of guys up front, but they have nothing but seniors up front. Devin Danielson, David Green, Tyler Bentley. These guys are all seniors. Davon Hayes as well was good off the edge. If you look at the linebacking core, they've got some concern here. Tyler Wills and Servassier Dennis, they're gone. They reload. Solomon DeShields was a good run defender. He's going to be much better this season with that increased snap count. Shane Simon was an elite coverage backer for them. Big Ali Kamara saw plenty of time. They really coached these guys up at all three levels, Nick. I certainly think this front seven, once again, is going to be one of the most feared in the conference of how they can get into the backfield, and they do it with a lot of physicality.
I think this is a good unit that has some nice hits. Yes, they certainly lose some players, right? Turnover to the NFL, but there are some nice players. Devin Danielson, next man up. Solid piece to have. Tyler Bentley, DeAndre Jules, another good solid pieces to return. Davon Hayes, a nice player, off the edge. I like him a lot. Bam Brima, he can get some time, get some production here. I like this defensive line. There is some nice unit here, certainly. Replacing Servassier Dennis in the middle is tough, but Solomon DeShields, a good run defender, nice player to have. Overall, I do think this front seven is good, and there are some nice pieces here they can certainly work with.
In the secondary, they're still trying to find its groove over the past couple seasons. I've certainly been critical of them not being a typical Narduzzi secondary that allows too many big plays and too many yards. I think this year, though, they're going to take one more step forward, just like they did this past season. This is a unit, though, even when they're struggling, Nick, still 14-plus interceptions each of the last 3 seasons. They really put it on their opponents. MJ Devonshire, really good awareness and eyes. He's a good run defender. He's going to be one of the top corners in the country. And then the rest of this unit certainly has got to be figured out. A.J. Woods, he was a solid player for them last season. The safety position, Philip O'Brien wasn't all good for them. Donovan McMillan comes over from Florida, though. Javon McIntyre's role was pretty undetermined. So there's a lot to sort out here in the secondary. But having Devonshire and Marquise Williams, strong corner duo, it's going to make things a lot easier for them.
I think this is a good unit that has some nice players. Devonshire, fantastic, hard-hitting, quick feet, nice player. I like the size at 5'11", 190, good player. Marquise Williams, good on the other side. A.J. Woods, nice backup. Javon McIntyre as well, good player as well, solid piece. Devon McMillan, good ad from Florida. I think he's a good piece to add. Pat O'Brien, he can definitely work on it, not bad at safety. This is a good defense. I think it's a very underrated defense. Pat Narduzzi's defense are hard-hitting guys. They get after the ball. They certainly need to improve on their interceptions, but overall, this is a pretty decent unit.
You're looking at North Carolina, that's probably the biggest shock here, Nick. I have them at 7-5. Obviously, that's tough to say. 34 points per game last season. Drake May. I expected one of the UNC quarterbacks, him or Jacoby Criswell, to really step up and be great. Drake May, though, he was the perfect replacement for Sam Howell. Same exact size, 6'5", 220. Exact same skill set. He's just even better, though, with great touch. Plays with great poise like a seasoned veteran. Impressive arm strength. He's going to the NFL next season. Drake May might even win the Heisman Trophy this season. And the biggest problem, though, is Devontae Walker. His future is in limbo. He might not be playing this year, which I think would be a big disservice of the NCAA to not let him play this season. Nate McCollum, he also came up from Georgia Tech. So if they can get these transfers to play, along with guys like Bryson Nesbitt, J.J. Jones, Gavin Blackwell, this is an incredibly deep receiving group for him to work with. They're deep at running back as well, even though the production isn't exactly up to par. The offense is going to be phenomenal, Nick. And obviously the defense, though, is why I think they're probably going to struggle this season, because year after year I bank on them to be much better, and they just don't do it. They didn't develop those strong guys they had in the secondary, like Tony Grimes, Storm Duck. Gave him 31 points per game this season. Cedric Gray, he's elite in the middle for them. I think the defensive line should be playing a lot better than they do. Come on, Rutgers back for them. Miles Murphy, he's on the field a good bit. He has some nice size. I think Kevin Hester's solid. Tamari Fox coming back should help them. The defensive line, kind of like Wake Forest, it's always been actually pretty solid the past couple of seasons, but they don't seem to do their job as good as they can. Secondary, I just have no faith in either, Nick. It's just the defense. I'm not going to bank on it anymore. Gene Chiswick's return, I think, is certainly, I like the attempt, but I'm just not going to bank on it anymore. I'm sick of the Tar Heels disappointing me on this side of the ball, 7-5.
I'm super excited for Drake May. He's my Heisman pick this year. Spoiler alert, going to say that now. I love Drake May a lot. You kind of nailed it last year with your pick. I'm going to give you 75% credit. You said you quarterback would break out. You didn't pick one, but Drake May ended up being the guy to take the reins. After that week 1 game against the FCS school, I know it's only FCS school, I knew we had a special talent in Drake May. He's an incredible player. Really took off as an offensive player last year. Fantastic numbers for him. Just a star in this game. Fantastic size, 6'5", 220. There were rumors he might transfer to Alabama. He ends up staying put. He should surely be a top 5 draft pick come next year. Just a talented player. I love what we see out of him. Losing Dontavius Walker is going to be a huge loss. If the NCAA does not let him play, certainly cements him as a clown show organization. There's no reason he should not be playing right now. Very talented player. Would be a huge, brutal loss for this team, but certainly hurt this offense. Very good offensive line. I think there are some improvement potential here. These are some solid players. Willie Lumpkin, nice player on the interior. Nate McCollum as well, good slot option. Defense has some nice pieces. Kamani Rucker, very talented player. Miles Murphy, pretty good player. Kevin Hester as well. Tamari Fox, not a bad player. The secondary needs to improve. This defense was flat out poor last year. 116th in the nation in pass yards per game with 271, 436 yards per game, get up 116th in the nation. They need to find a way to help it because this offense is very good. They'll score a ton of points, but the defense has to stay on the field and help them out because this has been a very tough thing for this unit.
Biggest thing I'm watching this year is the progression of Brent Pry's defense in his second year as lead man. 54th in points per game last year, 58th in yards per game, top 50 against the run. I'm really happy with what they have, Nick. This is a pretty deep defensive line. Darrell Pollard was a great player for them. Mario Kendricks, nice defensive tackle duo for them. They have some nice depth as well. Guys like C.J. McCray, Antoine Paul-Ryland, an efficient pass rusher. I think they're deep at linebacker as well. Alan Tisdale is one of the only veterans there. But these other guys, Jaden McDonald, Keontae Jenkins, Jaden Keller, they got on the field a good bit last season. I expect great progression from this front seven. And I think the secondary has a lot that they can provide as well. Dorian Strong is a player they really missed when in his absence when he played 4 games. Derek Canteen, he was a great coverage corner for the Georgia Southern Eagles over his career. And Mansour Delane, he was the team's best defender last year as a true freshman. He only played 7 games also. Jalen Stroman's been around a good bit. If they can remain healthy, Nick, that was certainly a problem last year. I think this defense can really progress. And that's the biggest reason why I have them at 8-4. Obviously, the offense is a big concern. They made some beefing additions on that side as well. Ali Jennings, Jalen Lane, I think they're really going to beef this receiving core up. And then Brayshawn Tutton from North Carolina A&T is going to help out the run game. Grant Wells, I think, should be in for a pretty solid season. I think Virginia Tech's a big sleeper team in this conference. I'm hammering the over 5.5. I think this is a good Hokie team. Progress, though, is certainly going to be something I'm monitoring.
I certainly think they can hit the over, like you said, 5.5. Seems a very, very bit low for me. Brent Pry, I like him as a coach, been solid so far. This team did not score a lot of points at all last year, 19.3 points per game. I certainly think they can get that number a lot higher. Grant Wells, struggled after coming over from Marshall, but he's a good player. I like to see what he can do. Nice raw talent. Ali Jennings, good downfield playmaker from ODU. I think he's a very talented player. Jaheel Lane, another talented player. Offensive line, solid unit. This defense has some nice potential. They return 5 starters. They lose their top 2 tacklers, but overall, good unit. Dorian Strong, nice in the secondary. Kelly Lawson, nice player as well. Jaden McDonald, brother of Jordan McDonald, good player. Nice player overall. Tony Jenkins, nice player too. This DB unit has some nice depth to it. This defense overall is a good team. I like this Virginia Tech team. They should easily get 6, 7, 8 wins. Good unit.
Now looking at our 2023 award predictions in the ACC, it's pretty straightforward. Drake May, Jared Verse should easily claim Player of the Year on the respective side of the ball. Mario Cristobal, Mike Norvell. I have them 2 meeting in Charlotte, so Coach of the Year on both sides for us is certainly going to be the expectation here. 2 Clemson Tigers being the breakout Player of the Year. That's certainly what's going to happen under Wes Goodwin's offense, or defense, that is. Jalen Lane, Newcomer of the Year. I had it as Devontae Walker, but right now I had to switch it up the lane due to some of the things going on with him. I think he's really going to help out the Hokies this year. Duke and Louisville, kind of echoing things we were talking about earlier, Nick. These are 2 sleeper teams, have good offenses. Duke, a much better defense than Louisville. But this is certainly 2 very solid football teams that can do work this year. And Jack Plummer's Newcomer of the Year is a phenomenal pick. I would say that's going to be the lock of the year because he has experience in this offense and he has a great weapon core at his disposal. I think our awards here are very solid, kind of straightforward. Nothing too crazy here other than maybe Miami ended up in the conference championship.
I agree. I think it's pretty straightforward, this conference. I think there is a lot of talent that goes around this conference. Our defensive and offensive player of the year is pretty straightforward. Drake May is my Heisman, so obviously he's going to be my offensive player of the year as well. Jared Verse, as soon as he announced he was returning to Florida State, book it. He was going to be your defensive player of the year. So talented off the edge, fantastic player. Mike Norvell going to get the respect he loves and love for me, in my opinion, because he's going to win the conference here over Clemson. They're going to lose to Clemson game 1, but they'll get a rematch with them and beat them the second time of asking and punch a ticket to the cultural playoff, in my opinion. Very talented Florida State team. Peter Woods, like I said, I saw him play in high school. It might be kind of controversial picking a true freshman to be a breakout player, but I like him a lot on that defensive line. Very nice people mover, solid player, huge body for him. Jack Plummer has to be a Newcomer of the Year. It's just an easy pick for me. I love him. Love his fit in the scheme. The 6'5" frame, 220, fantastic. Just great size with Plummer. I love the cannon of an arm. Very good player. That's why I think Louisville are my sleeper team here. They hit the lottery with their coaching. They're going to come out and really blitz them on offense. Yes, the defense worries me a little bit. I think the offense will score a ton of points, reminiscent to the Lamar Jackson era where they just put up a ton of points every single week. And I think Florida State's going to beat Clemson in that rematch. Like I said, overall, the ACC, I'm very excited. This is the most excited I've been for ACC football in a while. I think the conference is really balanced across the board. A lot of really talented teams here at the top end and a lot of teams at the bottom that also have some talented pieces. Should be a fun year.
Yep, 100%. Obviously, this is a team that certainly gets plenty of disrespect thrown their way. Certainly deserve it so at times, but I definitely think we have some very competitive teams. The top three in each de facto division. I think they're going to be really fun to watch this year. And then doesn't even include North Carolina, who's probably going to have the best offense. So this is going to be a fun year in the ACC, Nick. We'll see in a couple of months what happens. A lot of money on the line for some people like me on some of these teams. Certainly hoping not to be let down by teams like Miami and Duke.
Certainly hope that Duke lives up to expectations of Miami as well. A lot of expectations of Miami, a lot of expectations of a lot of teams in this conference. I'm very excited. I think the balance is there. This conference is no longer just dominated by Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Duke, Pitt, Louisville, all knocking on the heels of Clemson here. Very excited to see what can happen.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.